My name is Rhonda Asarch, and I'm here at the Boca Raton Historical Society with Miss Emily Santos from IBM, and we are conducting the IBM Oral History Project. Today's date is January 15th, 2013. Ms. Santos, I want to thank you for your time. First, I know how valuable it is. And if you would start off with telling us where you are originally from and when did you arrive in Boca Raton?
Originally, I am born and raised in Newark, New Jersey. And after I was married, moved up to Kingston, New York, where both my husband and I worked at IBM for about 7 years. And that was right about the time that the Boca site was beginning to grow. And so even though it had been here for a couple of years, the development and the research that was taking place here was really taking off. And so we applied for a transfer, and luckily were given one. And so we arrived in Boca Raton in February 1980.
Okay, so you talked about your background a little bit. What exactly did you do for IBM in New York? And then when you came to Florida, how did those responsibilities change?
So I have a business background, and up in Kingston, I worked in what was called at that time patent operations. It's now known as intellectual property law, and so has evolved. At the time in Kingston, we were working on large systems, and so most of the patents that came through the Kingston patent operations related to that. I was lucky to get a similar position here in Boca. At that time, it was still patent operations, and so we worked on patent development and going through the patent process with the U.S. Department of Patents to get those not only filed but also finally formalized and issued as patents. And so they covered a variety of the products that were being developed here at Boca, including the personal computer when it first was born, not only on the hardware side, but you might remember that at that time we also included software. And so we did some software testing before those patents were filed with the U.S. Government.
So when you moved from New York to Florida, which reasons would you say were most enticing? Was it the fact that everyone says beautiful sunshine, beautiful beaches, or was it the challenge that IBM offered you and your husband in this growing area?
I think the key reason that we decided to try to move down here, because at that time it was pretty difficult to get a transfer here. Even though the site was growing, it wasn't quite in its heyday yet. But the opportunities for us as a young married couple to move to a site that was right at the cusp of growing and exploding really was tempting. Of course, the weather was also tempting. It had its difficulties because we were leaving our family back home. It was just the two of us moving here. But the opportunities that we saw that the site would have really made it enticing. And we were lucky to have been offered the position.
Okay. Going on that theme a little bit more about you moving, the transition between New York and Florida. As IBM is historically an all-male type organization about that time. And from a female perspective, was there any difference for you in the transition from where you originally came from to Florida? Was the culture different? Was it more difficult for you? than it would have been your male counterparts? Did IBM make it easier, more difficult?
I think IBM made it transparent, where I didn't look at it as a difficulty. I think that at that time, if you were technical, then there were lots of opportunities that were opening up. And in a way, working in the patent group did make me technical. Mm-hmm. So I didn't feel differences, just the opposite, because it was in such a growing state. There were many opportunities, and IBM itself made opportunities for females. You know, they had the manufacturing line here already, but then they started a program where they trained manufacturing personnel to become secretaries or admins, and so they really did provide a lot of opportunities for growth, career growth.
Okay. And what exactly was your title when you came to Boca Raton, and then what is your title now?
So when I first came to Boca Raton, I would say my title was admin, but more on a paralegal side, because it was very specific to be in that patent organization. There were filings that had to be done, and working with the courts. So it was a little bit more technical in that regard. Since then, I've had wonderful opportunities to be in various groups, and today my current position is manager of corporate citizenship and corporate affairs, not only for the South Florida area, but also for Alabama, Indiana, and Puerto Rico.
Okay. And you had mentioned that when you arrived in Boca that there was a lot of research going on, which involved a lot of patent applications. Can you talk about any of those? I know that IP is very touchy at times, so if you can talk about what else was going on besides the development of the PC, I'd appreciate that.
Sure. So back in the 70s and 80s, while the PC was being developed, we also had quite a lot of other innovative products and services that were being done in Boca. Some of them included automotive systems, which I also had a little stint in, and that was working on the on-dash computer of cars, and that's way before people were thinking of that, you know, where you have your automatic built-in GPS and so forth. So this was working with the large automotive companies in the U.S., and the development was being done here. We had robotics that was done at one of the other sites. We had Data Master, we had software, Series 1, which is a phenomenal long-term Boca Raton product, System 32. So there were a lot of other programs that were being done here, and which at some point in time, their patent applications also went through the IP. By that time, I had moved out of that group and was actually working in an engineering group, and so it became a little bit different, not seeing the patents that were coming through or being developed. But we did have at the old site a huge patent wall, which was a recognition of all the patents that had been developed here by IBM engineers and programmers and had been actually issued to us, and that was the wall of recognition. Some of that is in the archives, and the Historical Society did have a little piece of that when we had our centennial last year, but that was just one entire wall leading up to the cafeteria where we recognized all of our patent inventors.
Okay. I don't want you to just try to. I'm thinking, put a number on how many patents. And I know that that's just impossible.
You know, I couldn't tell you the number, but I know that it's thousands of patents that were developed here. And we still have a group of, I mean, we still do development here, and so we have had, for the last several years, consistently over 50 patents that have been developed and issued here to the Boca Raton inventors. So while, of course, when we had a huge site of over 10,000 people, the number of patents was significantly higher. We're still just as technically engaged in patent development. As a matter of fact, last week it was just announced that IBM leads in patent leadership for 20 years in a row. And many of those are continue to come from right here in our Boca Raton site.
Congratulations on the announcement. When you mentioned about the size and how it's different now, can you talk about how that downsizing of IBM impacted you first, and then the company that you experienced as a whole?
Well, the size of IBM may have changed, but the people are still the same. We're still doing very technical development. Now we've gone more to more of a mobile workforce, and so it's not so much anymore about the bricks and mortar where people are actually sitting. The development is still going on. We also have a lot of sales people, and so they're actually out doing what we need them to do. And so they might work from a client site. They might call Florida home because it's a great place to call home, but they leave on Monday and they come home on Thursday. You know, their client might be more than likely in another state. And so we continue to evolve. I think that in many ways that's continue to make us stronger, to be, a best practice, if you will, because we still work together, team together, but we may not always be together.
Can you talk about some of the challenges that you have faced at IBM in your experience through, the heyday, the downsizing, and today, and how those challenges have changed through the times?
I guess if I think about that question, certainly I think it's the nature of a large corporation who has reinvented itself. Yes, we were a large group here, but what we were doing at that time was manufacturing, was putting things together. And as a corporation, we have evolved into software and services. So by that alone, it needs to change. I still have connections here in town. I've been here for quite a while, and so while some of our friends may have left and gone to other locations with their IBM positions, I still feel that I continue to remain connected with the community.
Okay. How did the city of Boca Raton impact IBM in your perspective? Did it have any impact? Did Boca contribute to the growth, or did it frown upon it? How was IBM accepted by Boca?
And that's a difficult question, because in my roles until this current role, I didn't have that connection, that IBM business connection with the city. But I do know that IBM brought so many jobs to the city that there was always a very close working relationship with city government. Very open, very welcoming, and so I think it's always been a very great working relationship, and I still see it that way because we continue to work with the mayor on many of our community aspects, and so I think it's always been a very warm relationship.
Okay. The culture today, is it the same as it was in IBM, such as one of the other interviewees said that it was very much a family culture and work hard, play hard type culture? Does that continue to this day, or is it more, I don't want to say relaxed, but...
I think once an IBMer, also always an IBMer. So maybe we don't play as hard, but we still work as hard.
Right.
But it's an entirely different atmosphere now. I think the culture is more relaxed. Just from the mere fact that many of us work from home, we can go into the office and work. That itself just gives you so much more flexibility. So by that nature alone, you're more relaxed. But we're also working harder in many aspects because, you don't have to worry about what am I going to wear to work today. I have to sit in traffic. You get up and you start working right away. So that flexibility is just great to be able to have that. This is a perfect example. I worked from home this morning so I could come here. From here, I'm going to go to a meeting in Fort Lauderdale, and then I'll finish my day off working at home. So that flexibility makes my life really much easier. And then what I do, I just really enjoy being able to have that flexibility.
Okay. So about the products that IBM is developing today, I know that IBM has or did the research and the development to make products like Siri and Dragon Dictation possible. What developments do you see that are present today, what technologies that IBM had a hand in that I haven't touched on?
Well, and not necessarily here in Boca, but IBM develops the chips that are in the Wii and Nintendo games, so that's our technology. It's not our box, but that's not the important part. We've worked on speech technology. We did a project called Master it must be about 6 or so years ago, where utilizing our speech recognition software, we were able to develop a unit that our soldiers could use in Iraq and Afghanistan. And so they would be able to speak English, and the unit would translate it into Arabic. And it just was a tremendous help to our soldiers. That was developed right here. That's an extremely proud moment that many people may not know about, but it was a gift that we gave to the government. It was a philanthropic gift. Part of our philanthropic literacy program called Reading Companion, again, that's speech technology that is being utilized. Much of that was developed here. Watson, we had a developer that worked on Watson, if you remember Watson and Jeopardy. And if you look at Watson, what could that be used for in the future? So we're working with hospitals and large medical organizations to see where we can bring that as the next step. I see things evolving. We're not doing laptops and desktops anymore. So many of our things now are handheld. And I think that just in generally speaking, that's probably the wave of the future. It's going to be handheld technology of some sort. It's going to be cloud technology of some sort. Now, we typically will not comment on what is coming next, but those are still things that any large corporation like IBM is going to be interested in working on. What exactly products are going to come of that, I couldn't even begin to talk or even think about it. I just know that it's going to be something that continues to move our technology forward.
Okay. Any other historical aspects regarding IBM that you wanted to talk about, that you can talk about? I know your position is sensitive, so I'm trying to...
we do a lot of analytics. And so I would imagine that that will be, probably something that will expand. Since I'm not on the development side, it's hard for me to actually give a good idea of where we're going to go next. I just know that I feel confident based on our patent portfolio, based on our patent leadership, and knowing that we have software development here on site and across the globe. We'll continue to be a leading enterprise in doing the development of those new products, but whatever they may be. It could be cell phone technology, it could be another type of voice recognition. I really don't know. As I said, I'm not on the development side, but I do feel that we'll continue to be a leader in the industry.
Okay. So let's talk about a little bit more, since you're more familiar with the corporate side. Mm-hmm. Let's talk a little bit about that then. The position that you're in now, was that created new for you, or did you replace someone's position?
Okay, that position, while the title has evolved, that position has always been within IBM. It's part of the IBM Foundation. It's the philanthropic arm of IBM. It's also the corporate responsibility side of IBM. And so there are about 70 of us worldwide. Many of us have, in the U.S., have many states. Like myself, I have a variety of states. But our initiatives are all the same. It's how we bring them to the local community. So our initiatives are workforce development, literacy, smarter cities, and social services. How we bring them to our communities depends on what the need in that community is. And so I've been in this position now for about 10 years. I did work with someone else who retired, and I was lucky to be in the right place at the right time. And since then, I have taken on additional responsibilities as it has emerged and evolved into today what is really more not only the philanthropic side, but how as a corporation we are socially and responsible and really engaged not only in the community but with our business to be an extended arm of what they're trying to accomplish as well.
Okay. The Philanthropic Foundation, when did it come into being? Do you recall a specific year that it was organized, or?
I don't recall a specific year, but as long as I have been with IBM, or at least for as long as I've been in Boca, the foundation has always been the philanthropic arm of IBM. It's the organization that does the grants, that manages matching grants, that it works with universities, works with school districts. And so we've had a variety of programs. As I mentioned, it's evolved. Mm-hmm. The foundation at the beginning was a foundation that really did more of a financial grant. And then we've seen it evolve, and we were then doing equipment grants because we felt that would be a wonderful way to help expand a nonprofit's reach. And now that we no longer do the equipment, now we're doing services grants. So we've tried to really move the needle forward in our philanthropic efforts, continuing to work with school districts, with cities, nonprofits to help them be able to enhance their reach, do things a little bit smarter, faster. So again, all aligning with our initiatives.
The Philanthropic Foundation, does it promote green businesses?
Absolutely.
And how does it go about doing that, since that seems to be the trend in the corporate world today?
Well, we have certainly the environment. IBM itself has a long history of protecting the environment and being a wise environmental friend. So when we do our grants, we certainly, so long as it aligns with our initiatives, we consider those kinds of grants. We don't do typically, a grant to a small organization. We try to make sure that our reach is more strategic and potentially helps the many versus a fewer. That doesn't mean that we wouldn't partner with a local agency. Of course, we would consider that. But we're trying to look at the bigger picture, especially over the last couple of years as we look at our Smarter Planet initiatives. And so how we can reach more people, we can be more far-reaching, more strategic in our grant programs.
You mentioned that IBM has a long philanthropic history, and going on with the green theme, have they always been ecologically conscious? I mean, even with the building that we have here in Boca, say, did they, I guess I'm asking, has there been any problems with the building?
There haven't been any problems with the building. Again, I don't have the statistics. I'd be happy to do some research, but we consistently would get environmental awards here at the Boca Raton site as well as at other locations around the country for being environmentally conscious, for saving energy, for recycling.
Because that's a huge building.
Yes, and those are the types of awards that we consistently got because we were conscious of the environment, and we were good stewards of the environment by doing recycling. I think we were probably one of the first companies that did an actual recycling program at our site, encouraging employees to recycle paper, cans, bottles. We even did returning of ink cartridges when we were doing, print jobs from the printers. And so, it's just something that is ingrained in us, and we do that all around the world, really, to try and be good stewards of our environment.
Okay, great. All right, you can't talk about future applications. It's a shame. I know. Can you, being on the corporate side, can you see the impact that IBM had on this area with its development and going back to the downsizing? Do you see that there was an impact other than, multiple growth, major growth and then shrink?
Well, if I look at just the infrastructure of the city, the schools grew, right? There were schools here, obviously, when IBM first started moving and transferring people here, but there was a need for so much more because we were bringing in families who had kids and they needed schools, and so the Palm Beach County School District grew in leaps and bounds to help accommodate those needs. The city infrastructure, they needed to also have more city works, public works to help the number of people that were moving to the city, the hospital, the university system. I think if you look at every part of a city's infrastructure, in one way or another, we have helped to grow that. In spite of the downsizing, that growth that the city experienced continues to this day. And now there's many people that continue to move to Boca Raton, to South Florida, who may or may not be IBMers, but that growth helped them move on to the next, to their new paths on services that could be provided.
And I believe IBM was instrumental in getting Scripps to move to South Florida?
I think that the Business Development Board, of course, was the most instrumental, but we worked with the city to encourage Scripps to come here. And I think that one of the things that was encouraging to them was that there was a corporation like IBM who was already here, interested in research and development, doing research and development. And so it was just a great logical step for Scripps to come to Palm Beach County and be another part and another instrument in helping to grow the county.
Okay. Is there anything else that you wanted to talk about that I haven't touched on? I know that there were some things that you had wanted to make sure we covered.
Well, really, what I wanted to make sure that we covered, and I think we did a little bit at the beginning, was to talk about the various programs, you know, that we had. I did mention some others that I wanted to talk about. We had the voice systems that I talked about, Arctic. We had the Internet division. We had so many innovative groups that were here doing development and still continue to do development. Their names might be different, but you know, we're still a very technical community. It's our services and software now is our focus, and that's I see that to continue. It's just been a wonderful experience to be part of that experience, part of that growth, part of the technology opportunities that have been here, and great way of teaching and learning these new technologies, which probably I wouldn't have had a similar opportunity staying and not having that opportunity to move to various units within IBM once I got to Boca Raton. That's been a phenomenal growth experience.
How did that benefit you? You said it's a phenomenal growth experience with each transition that you made to the different groups. How did that impact your personal and professional growth?
Well, professionally, it provided opportunities for promotion and more responsibility. In this current position, one of my a recent achievement was, as we look at Smarter Planet initiatives that the IBM Corporation is doing, we've been providing grants to cities that apply. It's a selection process. But the city of Jacksonville last year won a 3-week consulting engagement. What happens is the mayor identifies an issue that is most pressing to the city. In this case, it was economic development in Jacksonville. And so I had the pleasure, the experience, and the challenge all in one to spend 3 weeks in Jacksonville with our consultants, working every day with the city. And so I think professionally, personally, it was just such a great learning and growth experience. And I don't know that, I guess I'm just grateful really to have had that opportunity. I'm not sure that I would have had that opportunity in another role.
Okay. Okay. I can't think of anything else to ask. So if you have anything else that you want to add or not, then we'll conclude the interview.
I'm fine. Thank you.
Thank you so much.